Hey guys, it's Justin here. Hope everyone's having a happy holiday season, and boy, do I have a treat for you today. This is my number one most requested video, and this is an agent that makes custom content on demand for new leads and folks that are requesting things like PDFs, lead magnets, stuff like that from your go-to-market motion. It's a really simple workflow that we're going to take a look at, leveraging tools like Airtable, Anthropic's Claude API, plus a custom skill, Gamma to design our AI artifacts. And then we're going to email these pieces of content over to folks using Gmail, something super simple, and notify ourselves via Slack when one of these custom artifacts gets created with a message showing us what that artifact looks like. So let's go ahead and dive in and learn how to make some custom content agents. Hey guys, let's dive right into our custom content agent. What you see here in front of you is our agent in make.com. This is a super simple workflow leveraging a couple of tools. But before we get started, I want to make sure that we have our foundational assets in place. The tools that we need for this agent to work are Airtable, the Claude API, and a custom skill, a custom slide deck and template in Gamma, and then we'll need to log into our Gmail and our Slack instance as well. And if you don't have Slack and you use Teams or something else, you can use those. If you don't have Airtable, you could use something as simple as a Google form to have this workflow kick off. You could use a type form. Lots of tools out there that you could use in place of Airtable. I personally use Airtable because it helps me stay organized. All right, so there's a couple of things that we're going to need to get started. First things first, we're going to need to develop a custom skill to power our Anthropic agent. And this is a super critical step in the work that we're going to be doing. The skill that we're going to need to develop is going to allow our custom content to be very deterministic. And what I mean by that is predictable in what it's outputting. We're going to supply it with specific instructions about our brand guidelines, how many pages each asset should be, how to handle incoming requests, how to customize things. And all of those instructions are going to be packaged inside of our skill that we're going to upload to the Claude API. And every time someone requests a new piece of content, Claude's going to use that skill to develop that content so that it stays on brand, on message, and aligns with the rest of our content that's out there. So let's go ahead and take a look at how we are going to build that skill and upload it to the Claude API. All right, now that we are ready to build our custom skill with Claude, here is the conversation that I had in order to build my custom skill. It's very simple. We're going to upload a PDF, something that we typically use for lead generation that people are requesting to download, has all of our brand assets, things like that in it. And this is the PDF that we're going to be customizing on the fly for new leads as they come in based on their use cases and what it is they want to accomplish. In my case, it's folks requesting a new agent. My PDF and custom content is actually going to create a how-to on how to build that agent, as well as the key components of the agent that they're requesting. And then finally, give them some instructions on how to go build that agent and which tools they're going to need in order to build it. This is a PDF that I have available out there to download right now. I'll put a link in the description if you guys want to use this on your own to help you develop agents on your own. But pretty simple. When you're creating a skill, just go straight to Claude. Claude has instructions on how to build skills, but you can just have a simple chat. I'm using the 4.5 Opus model. It seems to do the best when building skills. I uploaded my PDF that I want to customize, and then I just gave Claude a simple instruction about how to write the skill that I want it to write. You definitely want to make sure when you're asking Claude to build your skill that it is making the skill API compatible. There are special rules for the API that don't apply to regular skills that you use in the Claude terminal. Make sure that you're giving it that special instruction to adapt your skill for API usage, since this is going to be an automated on-demand agent that can work, 24/7 while you're asleep whenever someone requests this content. All right, so Claude did its thing. It worked and worked, and with some back and forth, we got our skill. Usually, when Claude gives you your skill file, you're going to have several different outputs from Claude. I asked it to make a sample so that I could see what the sample looks like before deciding to what to use this skill. Here's the markdown file itself. Here's a reference markdown file. Here's the schema from the form that we're going to be providing to Claude so that Claude can develop this piece of custom content. And then finally, a coded output. I didn't like the output that I got, so I asked Claude to pivot. And instead of having the skill develop a PDF on its own, I told Claude I wanted this skill to actually prompt Gamma, a purpose built design AI tool, to develop the PDF for me instead. This is a critical pivot and it's super important because Gamma is a much better design AI and will give us superior outputs to Claude when it's just trying to build things on the fly on its own. So if you've struggled with having Claude give you like really great designs, consider using Gamma instead. And I'll show you just here in a second how Gamma fits into this whole workflow. All right, so after that pivot, Claude thought and worked for a little while, and then it gave me a new skill file for me to download and use with Gamma. I need to give it some more instructions about how we'll actually be invoking the Gamma API. We're just using make.com. We don't need to give Claude instructions on how to call the Gamma API because we're going to use make.com to access that tool. Claude isn't going to have to call the tool itself. So I made a couple more adjustments. And then finally, we got to something that looked pretty good. I asked to zip that up in a file, make sure it fits with the API. It caught a mistake that it had made. It had made the skill.md file too big for the APIs. Again, like I said, it's a power tip. If you guys don't ask it to adjust for the API, you're going to get an error most likely when you try to upload this skill to the API and use it with the API. All right, after it made that final correction, we had our AI agent architecture Gamma skill. So then after we got that skill file, we just hit download. It'll download to your tray in a nice zip folder. You can put that skill into a folder for your custom content agent, however you want to house it. And then I asked Claude to go ahead and develop a user and a system prompt that I can use with the API so that whenever someone requests that piece of content, it's going to provide the API instructions to use the correct skill and also how I want to design things with that skill and what kind of fields and things like that are coming over from my form from Airtable to help Claude have the context to customize that piece of content. So I went ahead and asked it to develop that. I got the prompts from Claude itself. So I got a nice system prompt here, a nice user prompt as well, all the schema and everything. So we're going to copy this over into Make here in a second and help design the workflow. So now that we have our skill and our prompts, the next step is to go to platform.claude.com. And then over here on the left-hand side of our API dashboard, you'll notice a skills tab where you can click on skills. Once you're in here, you're going to click this white button to add a skill. This is a very nuanced thing with with Claude, where you have to actually drag and drop the zip folder into this little square here for it to upload the skill to the API. Super weird. I know it says you can do an upload, but you can't. You have to drag and drop. There's no way around that. So let me show you what that looks like. All right, guys, now that we're back here at our workflow for our custom content agent, we're going to take a peek into some of these other modules so that we have everything set up appropriately and we can start testing our custom content agent. Right after the Claude API is calling our new custom skill and developing the prompts for Gamma, we're going to need to then pass that information over to Gamma. One thing that's critical about Gamma is if you have a paid account, you can use the Gamma API in conjunction with a tool like Make. I suggest Make. Make has a custom Gamma module, whereas N8N does not, Zapier does not. For whatever reason, Gamma has chosen to partner with Make, and they've developed their own version of this within Make. It's much, much more user friendly to use their API with Make than any other automation or orchestration tool that I've seen. So, power tip, use Make, don't use another tool if you're considering using Gamma for your custom content agents. So let's go ahead and take a look at Gamma. There's a couple of things we're going to need to set up so that this works correctly. The first thing you're going to need to do is come into Gamma and set up a custom theme. So you're going to want to select a custom theme that has your brand colors. You'll notice this is set up for me. It has my logo. It has all my nice brand colors in here. It has a nice gradient that I use. All this fun stuff. The fonts that I use, right? I've given it everything so that it does a really good job designing my content. After we set up our theme, we're going to then set up a template. So within templates, this is where you're going to use a PDF or something that you've already generated to develop a template for Gamma. The template that we're using today is the Anatomy of an AI Agent template. This is something that I use with clients, that I help people kind of understand how agents work. It's an educational piece of content, and it's meant to be customized for a unique agent request. So where I have here my 8 building blocks of intelligence, when someone requests a new agent from me via my Airtable form, my Gamma and Claude skill and everything is going to customize this piece of content for the agent they're requesting. It's going to customize the 8 building blocks of intelligence to build an agent for that specific agent. So you can see how this is quite powerful. If your customers or new leads are requesting knowledge from you, right, where you can give them that bottom funnel, real hard hitting insight that you have where folks are indicating that they may be ready to do business with you, and you can customize it for their specific use case. For me, if someone requests an agent, it's probably someone who's interested in building that agent. It also helps me understand what kinds of agents people are wanting to build and develop content for them to build those things. So think about what you have available to you. If you don't have anything like this available to use, feel like you need something to even get to this point, consider making something with either Gamma or Claude or a combination of the two to create that lead magnet artifact and that template within Gamma that you can then use with a skill and can be customized on the fly in the future. It probably won't take you too long if you have like a unique insight or a unique point of view about your business or your space. You can probably come up with something pretty quickly, just prompting along with Claude, and then have something developed in Gamma, polish it up, and then make it a template. So all that being said, you're going to need those two things. You're going to need a template and a theme within Gamma. And then the third thing you're going to need is to get your Gamma API key. And if you just go into your settings, you're going to see up here at the top, there is the APIs key tab. Click on the APIs key tab and then create a new API key. After you create an API key, you will never be able to see the key again. So if you don't have it written down or saved somewhere, you're going to have to create a new key, right? So this one suggests naming it Zapier. It's kind of funny they suggest Zapier instead of Make when they don't have a Zapier module, but they do have a Make module. So anyway, name it whatever you want, get that API key, and then come back over to Make and start setting up the Gamma step. And I'll show you how to do that in just a second. So now that we have our foundational assets, the only thing that's missing is our trigger event, which would be a form fill. I've set one up for my business that I can show you right now that is pretty straightforward. It's just an agent request submission. I'll link to this in the description if you guys want to test this out. Request an agent, request the content. Feel free to come in here and use this. I could use a Google form instead of an Airtable form. I could use a type form, something like that, a Jot form. All of those are possibilities. Whichever form tool you're using, you could use a HubSpot form. You can use that with this workflow and use that instead of Airtable to kick things off. So the event here is anytime someone fills out my form, They then get added to my Airtable for agent requests. And you'll see in here, we have 5 agent requests that we can test with today, several different go-to-market use cases. And my table is set up so that every time someone requests something, there's a column for the Gamma output. So once Gamma creates that custom content for them, it's then logging it here. And we can take a look at these in a second and see how things are coming out once people request their assets. I would consider setting up a similar table. This could be a G sheet instead of an Airtable. You know, you could house things in a lot of different ways. You could house it in Notion as well. Alrighty, so once someone fills out the form, that's when Anthropic comes in and we start using our custom skill that we just developed. So again, I like to use Claude 4.5 Opus for all of my agents. It does the best job. It rarely gets things wrong. I put the effort level to medium, just trying to save a little bit of money on token cost and meta thinking steps. This is not a super complex workflow. So hopefully with the skill being leveraged, it can pretty quickly generate what we need it to generate. I give it a max of 50,000 tokens for each job. I know that's kind of high. Some people might think that's too many tokens. If we're doing 8 pages of content, 10 pages of content, 50,000 tokens might be appropriate. It just depends on how much text you have in each page. Then we come down to our prompting. Remember, we created those prompts over here in the Claude conversation. Sorry, over here in the Claude conversation. So just go back here and copy your prompts and then paste them into the user prompts section. This will be a single string. And then scroll down, extended thinking. We're not going to use extended thinking today. We will be using a skill. So in the skills dropdown, you should be able to select custom and you should see your custom skill here, right? So we have the custom skill that we just developed. And you would see a list of custom skills here if you have several. And then you can just select the skill. You can actually add more skills if there are more skills. So if we were going to use something like the PDF building skill from Anthropic, we could select that here. Just go to Anthropic and you'll see the skills from Anthropic for creating Excel sheets, creating PowerPoints, creating PDFs, and creating Word docs. I found that these are a bit lacking in the ability to customize and brand them. They also tend to be a little wonky looking when they come out of the API. So use at your own risk. That's why I'm using Gamma again instead of using Anthropic's native PDF builder and native PowerPoint builder. Finally, we will come down and add our system prompts. So again, we will just copy and paste that right out of our chat with Claude into the make.com module. And I think that is it. The output is going to be text in this case. We're not having it output anything else. You could select JSON. That is not what we will be using today. It will be a text output. Next, we're going to configure our Gamma step. This is very simple. From the previous step from Claude, it will be generating the prompt for Gamma to generate our custom content artifacts. So all you have to do is map the Claude response into this input text section, and that is quite simple. You just click on text response, and boom, it is there. This will be a prompt from Claude for Gamma to use to develop your content. Super easy. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to ask it to preserve and keep the original text structure. We don't want Gamma to get creative or reduce the text by making it more concise or shorter. We want it to keep that original text that we used from our document that we uploaded to Gamma and uploaded to Claude. We don't really want it to change too much. How many cards is this presentation going to be? It's going to be 10. Instead of a presentation, you could select a document, you could select a web page. Both of those are applicable. If you're doing custom content for social media, you could select a social post and a social graphic. That would be appropriate as well. You could have new Gamma modules doing each one of these things so that you get several pieces of content coming out of one workflow. How are we going to split up the cards? We're going to let it automatically decide how to do that. There are instructions in my skill about where to start a new card, so I'm not too worried about it picking up on that from the prompt. Now we're going to select our custom theme. Remember a few minutes ago when we built that theme in Gamma? Well, this is now where we're going to go ahead and select that. If you don't have a custom theme, you can use one of Gamma's pre-configured themes. There are many to choose from. Go ahead and take a look at what those look like prior to selecting them so that you have a feel for whatever it is you're selecting and you can make sure that it is close to your brand standards. And if you had any additional instructions for the AI that you wanted to provide about maybe image generation, things like that, you could add that in here. How much text is supposed to be within this document? I just selected medium. You can ask it to do detailed or extensive for more text or brief for less text. I haven't included more instructions on tone, target audience, things like that. If you wanted to be super sophisticated, you could ask Claude to output each one of these things every single time it creates an asset. I don't think that that's necessary. I think there's enough instructions from the prompting from the skill to where I don't feel like I need to give this every single time. If you wanted to be very, pinpoint control over what you're doing here, you may consider having these other things output from your Claude step as JSON instead of text. That way you could map them all into this step for Gamma. All right, so with the images that we're asking to be generated in our prompting from Claude, how are we going to generate those images? What are our instructions for Gamma? Well, we're going to let AI generate the images, and I'm going to let Nano Banana Pro. I personally really enjoy that model. Generate my images. I am on the Pro tier of Gamma, not the Ultra tier. So I have to use these models within the Pro tier or something below. You'll notice it other tiers like the free tier, only certain models are available. To even use the Gamma API, you have to be on a paid tier. So you're going to be able to use either the Plus or the Pro tier models. In the Plus tier, you get Nano Banana Flash. In the Pro tier, you get Nano Banana Pro. Pretty cool. You can even use DALL-E images, ChatGPT images. And then in the Ultra tier, you'll notice you get Nano Banana Pro HD and some really nice models. You even get ChatGPT's newest model. You'll notice that there's a credit cost to each image that you're generating with these models. And you want to pay attention here because selecting a model like ChatGPT is going to cost you a lot more per image than maybe Nano Banana does. Guys, now that we are done with the setup for Gamma and Claude, we're going to go ahead and configure our delivery for our custom content assets. I'm going to use Gmail. This is a very easy way to deliver things via email to those that have requested a piece of content. If you were using, a different email client, lots of those are available here too. Really, all we need to do is get the output from Gamma into some delivery system via email or otherwise for the person that has requested the content. So a couple things to set up Gmail. Once you connect your Gmail account, you'll notice that the very first thing, obviously, is that we need an email address. So in my form, I ask for an email address. This is very simple to map. Once you have that form set up correctly, you'll just click email address. I've customized the delivery slightly to include the requester's first name in the subject line. I find, as most people that have done email marketing, when you include some sort of personalization token in the subject line, you get a better open rate. So something that I would recommend you consider for your setup. The next thing that we're going to configure is the body contents of the email. This is just quite honestly writing the email itself. Something super simple can go in here. You can also use HTML tags if you want to format this to make it look really nice and pretty. I went with something very easy and generic. With my configuration, I just put in user's first name. Here's your custom report. This is where we will map the Gamma fields. And here you can see what Gamma is outputting. It's actually outputting a Gamma URL as a link that folks can click on and see the content that was just generated. And it's also giving us a nice export URL so that they can then export that content and take it with them later on, send it around, show their friends, show their team, whatever it is that you want them to do with it. We could have Gamma if it were developing PDFs or PowerPoints instead of, in this case, just slides, output those files as well. If you go back to the Gamma step, you can actually ask it to export as a PDF or export as a PowerPoint. And when you do that, you will be able to provide a link in the email for someone to receive that PDF as an attachment. If there's anything else you want to add, like a signature or something like that, if you had a custom signature, you can add that. If you wanted to attach a file, again, this is where you could attach a file if we're getting more sophisticated in our workflow. In this simple one, we're just using links. Keep it simple for today. You can always level things up in version 2, version 3. After the email is sent, we then update our Airtable record with the link to the new content. So we map back to our Airtable record that triggered this workflow. This is the record ID from our Airtable itself, so that it can reference which row to now log this new Gamma URL into. And then we simply add the Gamma URL into a column on the appropriate row. That's all we're doing in this step. It's pretty simple. Save that step. And then finally, I like to send myself a ping in Slack whenever someone requests a new agent or a custom piece of content in your case. Just create a new Slack channel to collect these things. I've created one, I call it new leads. You could call it, custom PDFs or whatever you will recognize as this request. I add the person's name. I add their use case, just so at a glance, I can kind of tell what it is they're asking for, see if it's something that I recognize, something that I've built before, something that is commonly requested, or something that's new that I may have never heard of, that I might need to go research. You could do more sophisticated things. You could then add a new workflow if it's something you want to research, that you could go in Slack and add like a checkbox emoji that then kicks off a new workflow for deep research into, the person's company, the use case they've requested, how we might set up an agent like that. And then you could get that deep research report then logged into, your Google Drive or emailed to you, so that, or even posted to Slack again, so that you can investigate, research, and consider how you might do this work for this request. Super simple. Today, we're not doing anything like deep research as another step, but now that everything's set up, let's go ahead and give it a spin. Let's run this bad boy here and let it go. So you'll notice the request has come in. Let's see what it was requested. A competitive intelligence monitor. It's going to do these things, automatically track competitor product launches. Our agent will then, or we're currently using sales and marketing teams to manually check competitor websites. Sounds super manual. We'd like this to run every 6 hours. I might tell you that's a little too often for something like this. A competitive intelligence monitor, maybe run that weekly. Anyway, this is the request information that came over from the client. They prefer to use N8N. They prefer to use Claude. They're somewhat technical. The team using the agent is going to be the product marketing and sales enablement teams. All great stuff for us to develop a really awesome piece of content. So instead of watching this workflow end to end, we'll take a step away for a second, and then we'll come back and take a look at this once it's done. But let me just show you what this looks like once the content is done. So here is the request for the competitive intelligence agent in my Airtable. I actually have a link to it here. I've already done this this agent run. And so let's go ahead and take a look at what that content looked like when it was generated. And so you'll see here it is customized for the competitive intelligence monitor. And it is written content every step of the way that is custom. It has customized the 8 building blocks for a 6-hour scheduled monitoring cycle. The systems that they use, Claude is going to be used to do this workflow. How are we going to do prompting? What are the outputs going to look like? Again, this is my process for building agents that I use with my clients. If you want to, again, request this artifact for yourself, feel free. The link is in the comments or the description to this video, but you will get a similar asset sent to you as to what you're seeing here. And so looks pretty good. I think this is pretty on brand. Has my colors, everything looks really nice. I will, check Slack in a second when I get that notification, but yeah, it looks like it did a really good job. So let's go check back in with the agent itself. Looks like Claude is done with its work, so that's great. Everything came over from Claude. Now Gamma's working on the content itself. It's customizing things based on the prompt that it's just received from Claude. So we'll give it a second to think and run and develop that content, but everything seems to be working as intended for this workflow. So that is great. We are happy. Boom, everything is now completed. Let's see if we can see. All right, so let's take a look at the email that was delivered. And yeah, it looks like we have a copy of things here. Let's pop this up and let's take a look at the Gamma file. Let's just copy this link into a new tab. And here we go. The Anatomy of an AI Agent, Competitive Intelligence Monitor. All right, so again, we have very similar outputs to what we saw before, and this is looking pretty good. You will notice some variance from asset to asset just because Gamma may decide to interpret the prompting a little bit differently. Maybe the prompting comes out slightly differently from request to request. So even the same request going through 2 times in a row, those of you who are veterans of AI and AI workflows know this, but there could be a bit of variance. We're trying to mitigate that as much as we can with our Claude skill and our themes and things like that so that all the major components are not drifting. We have our brand components that are pretty locked down. We have our content pretty locked down. And I think that it's just minor variances that you might see from design to design. As a bonus, guys, for anyone that's made it this far in the video, there is a link in the description to download this workflow from make.com. So if you want to actually just use the exact workflow that I have here and customize it for yourself, you can click the link in the description, download this workflow, save yourself a bunch of time configuring things, and just use the configuration that I made today. And start using this right away. So the things that you would still need to develop on your own is that custom theme and that custom skill based on your branding and your content. I will put my skill into a file in the description for you so that you can leverage my skill and maybe just update it a bit for you and your use case so that you can get started quickly. If you like this content and you want to see more videos like this, feel free to leave me a comment below. Tell me which other videos you'd like to see. I'd love to see some requests for new agents come through. So if you guys are curious to get some of this content yourself, feel free to give it a spin. I'd love to see that usage. Again, guys, happy holidays. I hope to hear from you all in the new year. Have a fabulous new year and a great 2026.